I'm Chris Thompson, and you're listening to Mega Talks, episode 17. Welcome to another great episode of Mega Talks. Here on the show, I'll talk with people that I've met as an acquaintance, maybe for a couple of minutes, and have a chance to interview them on the show. I'll talk with people that are strangers and interview them here on the show. I'll also talk with people that I've known for years. Which brings me to my next guest. Her name is Melanie Hogin. Today she's going to tell us her story about growing up, her childhood, and how she overcame a situation of domestic abuse and was able to get out with her livelihood and her family, changing laws along the way, becoming a college graduate, becoming a professional therapist. How did she do it? She's going to tell you right now on Mega Talks. How you doing today, Melanie?
I am doing great. Enjoying this Saturday.
Cool. I'm glad you took the time to speak with me today, but we've known each other for years and just getting into the nitty gritty. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I actually was born in Nashville, Tennessee. My had moved. My whole family was from Mississippi, but my grandfather was in the country music business, and they kind of migrated to Nashville. And I was born here, and pretty much grew up here until I left Tennessee in about the 8th grade and moved to Arkansas, which is where I met you. And that was a journey. I went from Nashville, Tennessee, to a small town called Dardanelle. And
big change.
Big change, kind of cultural shock, actually.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't very easy making that move for me at that age. I had always had the same friends, and so it wasn't real easy to integrate into such a small town and a new school, and where everyone was so close knit. So
Mm-hmm.
I struggled a little bit there, and then we moved again, and I moved to a little town, the next town over, to Pottsville, and that's where I ended up finishing out finishing out high school till my senior year.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And what did you think about the difference between, we know a lot of people, between Dardanelle and Pottsville, but in that town, the setting was different. What were some of the differences between just making that adjustment between the schools and the atmosphere?
Well, Dardanelle was a little bit bigger, and it wasn't quite as welcoming as Pottsville, actually. Pottsville was a lot smaller. It kind of reminded me of growing up in Nashville. I had seen a lot of private schools and had friends that went to private schools. It was more like almost like a private school setting because it was just a smaller school. And, I did really well there. Made a lot of friends, tried out for cheerleading, got involved in activities, and it was just something I didn't really do at Dardanelle. So that was a positive change for me, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
during that time period. And I made a lot of good friends. I actually still talk to a lot. Well, I have a lot of good friends from Dardanelle as well, but still actually communicate with lots of people from the area and still think of them as great friends.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And I know you said something about, it not exactly finishing school. Maybe some things,
Yep.
in your childhood were a little rough and things didn't, or at the
Yeah.
time, sometimes you're thinking that you can't make it out of, your situation, but
Yeah.
you persisted and you kept going. How did you feel the differences
did.
between the childhood and, persevering to where you are at now?
Oh, wow. Someone asked me not long ago, like, if you could go back to childhood and things like that. It was a client of mine, and what would you do different? Because it was a younger client, actually, an adolescent client.
Mm-hmm.
And my childhood developed me to exactly where I'm supposed to be in this life. it wasn't easy. I grew up with a single mother. My father was a truck driver, so he was, always on the road and always gone. So I didn't really have a great relationship with him through childhood. But, it was one of those things. My mom lived paycheck to paycheck. So I felt the need in high school to, get a job. And, it just kind of molded me into who I am today. And my life, as I look back at it, from then till now, I embrace it. I embrace everything that I went through because as I'm a therapist
Hmm.
now and I work with people of all ages. And as people are sitting in front of me, I feel like I do a better job at being able to identify, and that's called transference.
Oh yeah.
So it's a
Okay.
fine line. It's a fine line, but I think I can better help someone because I didn't have this easy route or this easy journey in life.
Hmm. You have that
There's
life
not this
experience that they
exactly,
can identify.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So, but my life is totally different
Hmm.
um, from Dardanelle, Arkansas, or I am back in Middle Tennessee, and um, we are my family and we do real well, and I don't have the struggles that my mom had,
Hmm.
and I feel like that, my goal, I wake up every day of how can I help a single mother? How can I help that adolescent that really, mom's working all the time, and I mean that's just my drive each day when I wake up
Yeah.
is to help someone that might be where I was when I was in middle school or high school or whatever. So most of the population that I work with right now currently is adolescents.
Hmm.
So that makes up probably 80% of my clientele. So anyhow, but totally different.
Hmm. Now,
But
when you were younger, did you think you would be a therapist?
oh my gosh, absolutely not. If somebody would have told me years ago that I would be a therapist one day, I would
Hmm.
have like laughed.
Uh-huh.
Always been like I've always been a really, I think, an outgoing, personable person. And when you look back at what you think you'll be um, when you grow up, quote, grow up, I wanted to be like a newscaster. I think was one of
Oh,
the things
okay.
I love to sing, still
Hmm.
do. Of course, I had the grandfather that sang in the country music business forever. So there was a time where I thought I wanted to be a singer. Hey, I
Hmm.
mean,
Plus, being from
I,
Nashville.
yeah, and honestly, I did. I started out when I did go to college. I started out in nursing, and I would be doing my clinicals, and my professor would be like, "Why are you can't stay in the rooms that much. You can't talk that much. You got to pass the meds. You got to do this." And I'm like, "Well, they needed somebody to talk to. I mean, they're lonely,
Yeah.
you know." And so I took a job outside of the hospital in a drug and alcohol rehab center. And what turned in from like medical work turned into me leading groups, like therapeutic groups.
Hmm.
And I just knew then. I'm like, that's what I need to do. And
Now, was
that's
this
what I did.
when you helped them were helping out? Was that a paid position, or was that something that more or less you're volunteering your time because you're of the
Nope.
passion?
Nope. That was actually at that time that was my paid position at it's a drug and alcohol rehab here in Middle Tennessee, and it was a paid position in which I did, I it was a detox hospital for people that were detoxing off a multitude of different kinds of drugs. And then they'd go to groups and
Hmm.
they were like, "Hey, do you want to lead a group?" And I'm like, me lead a group? And they were like, "Yeah." And I was like, what do you
Hmm.
want me to talk about? And it just went from there. I started doing like art therapy with them, like, let's write. And I started developing my own ideas for groups. And
Hmm.
I had a mentor there that was a licensed clinical social worker, and she was like, "Hey, have you ever just thought about being a therapist? And I was like, oh no, that's just, and I remember the day I came home and told my husband that I wanted to be a social worker. And he automatically looked at me and he was like, what do you mean you want to work for DCS? And I'm like, no, 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 no. No, there is so much more.
Yeah.
And I educate a lot on that, Chris,
Uh-huh.
of what social work really is, what it truly is, and what it can be. It's not just working for the state and DCS or CPS. I mean, there's therapists. It's called the unique profession for a reason. Lobbyists that pass. I've actually dabbled in that a little bit in social work here in Nashville. I've done some legislation work. It's such a broad profession, and
Now,
there's so much opportunity.
in some of the different things, involved in that profession, are there certain standards that you have to meet, like certificates to be able to lead this group or
Oh
do
yeah,
certain things?
yeah.
How do you go about, doing those with, without going 4, 6, 8 years of college or something?
Oh wow. Not easy. There's obviously I have to like maintain for licensure. You have to, go through the education and take the test and get your licensure, and you have to do so many years of residency before you can have a private practice. And then you have continuing education that never ends as long as you're licensed. Um, but there are like alternatives of that if someone can't spend the time of like, a decade. I was in school for a decade. Um, in school getting that, there's life coaches that like help, in my scope of practice that can lead groups and things like that. And those are certificates that you can get online.
Hmm.
And, you know, um, I look at like skills of like what have you been through in your life? What can you talk about?
Hmm.
So you don't particularly have to have a license to lead a group. If you're getting out there, like with my Red Cross work, I don't have to have a license to do anything with American Red Cross. I mean, you can volunteer and there's something out there for everybody if they want to
Yeah.
help. Just you just have to pick the place,
Hmm.
where you want to be and where you want to help and what population you want to serve.
And you said when you started, and you said when you started college, you were practicing to be a RN, a nurse.
Yes. Yes.
And which college did you start off in?
Well, I started out at Nashville State Community College, and they had just started the nursing program there. So that's where I started, and I'm a mother, so I had two smaller children, and I thought nursing was just kind of the way to go, just because of the hours, and I could spend some time with them.
Hmm.
And so I started at Nashville State, and then I went to finish that program with an Associate of Science. And then I moved on to, that's when I decided after the stint that I was telling you about working at the rehab, I decided to go into social work. So I went to Lipscomb University, which was a private school here in Nashville.
Hmm.
And that's, where I got my start in social work and the profession, and had to do some volunteer work. And I just knew that was just like the perfect fit for me. So I continued on to another school for for to finish out I finished out my bachelor's degree after Lipscomb at Austin P State University.
Oh yeah.
And then I was that person that, I studied all the time and I wanted to do so well.
Hmm.
I challenged myself. If I didn't have like a on something, I'm like, how did that happen? So, and if I look back at high school, because I'm with adolescents all the time and I'm doing therapy with them, and they're like, hey, I can't get better than a C. I can't do it. I can't. And I can tell you
You can.
that, Chris, when you knew me, when we were young, I don't know that I made better than a D, maybe. I'm not even
Oh yeah.
sure. I mean, like, yeah, I was never a good student. So I set my standards. I wanted it. I wanted A's. I wanted to see that on paper. So
Uh-huh.
studied. But anyways, finished out my bachelor's degree at Austin P. It was a state school. Wasn't quite as pricey as Lipscomb being a private school in Nashville. But then I went into a bridge program um, at the University of Southern California, which what it was an accelerated master's, and you can bridge over to a doctorate
Mm-hmm.
in so many months. And I looked at schools all over the country, and I was like, the National Association of Social Work had a president named Susan DeWart Peck, and that is the school that I went to USC's Susan DeWart Peck School of Social Work,
Yeah.
and I would say that it's probably, I think it's the second or third this year of social work schools in the country with an 11% entry rate, I believe is what it was when I
Shoot.
got into the program.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was when I got accepted, I remember that day, I was like, oh, I'll apply, but I'm not sure what's going to happen here. And I mean, I was just so, just, it was just probably I would rate that day up in the day of having children, getting married, I was like, I got into one of the best in the country.
Yeah.
It was the most amazing experience for me.
And where was it located?
In Angeles, California,
Uh-huh.
and I got to go out there several times and do conferences. I actually spoke to the entire staff of the social work department one time. Surprise, actually, they kind of asked me to speak, like no agenda, no nothing, and I was like, what? But and tell my story of what got me to USC from Nashville.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot. It was a mental health social work program, so it focused on becoming a clinician as well. It was like a specialty program for those that wanted to be like therapists.
Mm-hmm. What did you think
So
about the, public speaking? Were you ever, shy about that, or were you just
yeah,
in your element in front of people?
I'm a work in progress with that. Like I I haven't mastered it yet. I'm hopeful
Mm-hmm.
to master that. I still get a little okay, so when I'm speaking, we're talking right now.
Yeah.
Uh I get like there's those little things those seeds that get planted like in childhood, and we can talk about this all day long. And it's like, "Oh, well, I'm not sure you can do that."
Hmm.
And, I could be talking to you right now or trying to talk to people, and that little seed, whatever that is, comes up, and I have to take a deep breath and just move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But I still get a little bit nervous and a little tongue tied. I mean, I'm not a professional public speaker or anything, but um, I would like to get better because I have a lot of goals as I move forward in life of what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my biggest inspirations is a public speaker. So
Oh
she's a
yeah.
social worker, and her name is Brene Brown. And I mean, that's where I want to be in 10, 15, 20 years from now, is public speaking. So I'm working on it.
And what year did you start college?
I started college. Oh my gosh, that's a quick. June. Okay, I got my GED because I did not finish high school. I got my GED in 2008. I started college in 2009. We are almost 10 years in, and I just completed my last program in December. So if someone says they don't think they can, they can.
Yeah. Because I
Yeah,
know
I
I
bet
know you spent a lot of time, in school and
I did.
doing some different things, and there's a lot of
Hmm.
people, that would just find a way out, or take a what do you call an easy road. But what
Yeah.
kept you determined,
Oh
to
my
finish?
gosh.
What was your
Hmm.
motivation?
Um, well, I wanted to first, my motivation would be I wanted to show my kids that anything is possible. I was multitasking being a parent and going to school, and they know what my dream is. It's very, very clear to everybody where I want to be at and what I want to do. And I wanted them to see, because I just had a son graduate from high school.
Hmm.
And, I modeled to him that whatever you do, you can do it. I worked, I went to school. There were days that I I wanted to get, I mean, it got really hard, especially this last program, writing it would be, I'd write a 30-page paper towards like a thesis, dissertation type deal. And I mean, it wasn't right. There were so many errors. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I haven't slept in like, I'd take like 3-hour cat naps was what I call them, and wake back up and write papers. It was hard.
It was
But I
more
looked
than
at my
just being in the
kids.
zone.
Yeah,
You had to
yeah. But
immerse yourself in it.
I looked at my kids. I thought about that person 10 years from now that I could sit in front of and hopefully, be some sort of impact on them. And that's the person. And I probably haven't even met them yet that kept me going.
Hmm.
Um, I'd suffered from depression in my past. You know, um, I wanted to be that person that was able to, and you had to have, you have to have this degree to get your licensure to do this.
Yeah.
There's these steps, and there, so Chris, you asked who I did it for. I did it for a lot of people. A lot of people I haven't met. A lot of people that I love.
Uh-huh.
Kids. I mean,
Uh-huh.
and just anybody out there that may be listening that thinks that, they just can't. The student loans, I mean, it obviously wasn't free.
Yeah.
Um, I look at them on some days and I get a little overwhelmed, but I don't let them scare me.
Yeah. And that's
I
that's
don't,
one of the things I was going to ask about. You spent a while in college and making the trip out to
yep.
California. How did you
Hmm.
balance between doing that and having a family and living in
Yeah.
Nashville, doing that at the same
I,
time in that
I can
distance?
tell you that I just have an extremely supportive family. I have an absolute wonderful husband. He is supportive. He was manning uh, a baby and kids and was like, you got to do what you got to do. And I would, when I went out to California, I'd be out there for like 4 or 5 days and, I'd come back home, but
Hmm.
it still was hard. He FaceTimed me with my kids.
Yeah.
And, but I have a mother that would have stepped up to the plate to do it. I have a mother-in-law that could have stepped up to the plate to do it. I have friends that, so I don't want to deter anybody that, hey, it was because she had a husband she could do it. No, there are a
Hmm.
lot of people that I surround myself with. I have a best friend that I joke with that, like, I can't live without her. I mean, she's like my rock.
That's good.
And, I just know that, let's just say it didn't have, she would have been there for me. I mean, when you surround yourself with people that want you to thrive and that want you to meet your goals, that's how you become successful. When you surround yourself with people that, I believe in um, quality over quantity. So I surround
Yes.
myself with just like people that want to see me happy and successful and that truly love me. And if that's one or two, Chris, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's
I,
for
I don't
sure.
need, so
Most people
that's
only have like five people that are really close to them. The rest, they're just kind of occupying space. Some of them, and they'll tell.
yes.
Sometimes they'll have you tell you good things, but other
Oh
times
yeah.
they'll just be jealous and tell you some bad things because they don't understand um, the level of success that you want to achieve.
Right. And I figured out, we recently there's been all this awareness about suicide and things like that. And before I started to school, I suffered from a terrible bout of, I mean, still, I mean, I've I wouldn't say I'm past depression. I still have days.
Hmm.
Um, but when those times were happening, whoever was there is still with me. Makes sense? So
Yes.
I had all these friends, but when it got tough and I wasn't like the happiest person to be around and I wasn't who like I am today,
Hmm.
these people were still there. Are you okay?
They didn't quit on you.
What can I Yes. And those are the people that I still surround myself with. And those that didn't, and actually it's kind of great because some of those people are actually people that I went to high school with in Arkansas.
Yeah.
I mean that would call me from, hey, can I come visit you? Hey sis, how are you doing? I just want you to know I love you. I know things are hard right now, but
Hmm.
just. So, when I'm talking to people, that is surround yourself with that tribe, that because they'll get you there. They'll get you there. That tribe when you when you just surround yourself with them,
Yeah, and I think
and
some people,
and they're good.
when you grow up in high school, you picture the world a certain way, and when you get out in it, you find out it's not exactly the same picture that you had. And people go through that change where the perfection doesn't exist anymore, and they find out they go through their trials and tribulations, and therefore
Mhm.
they can identify with other people, which changes you as a person. So you're more,
Mhm.
sympathetic to somebody.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so some of those people that knew you and gave up on you will understand what you're going through and reach out to you and say, "Hey, I can identify with that, and
Yeah.
can you help me? Because I've seen you do
Yeah.
this and overcome."
Yeah. I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. There's been people that to get to a place. I'm turning 40 this year.
Oh,
To get to a
congratulations!
place of turning 40, and there's a lot of forgiveness that comes with that.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot becoming a therapist about letting go and forgiving people and how to help people. And I've had people that I was surprised that actually have reached out to me, and like, is there can you help me through this? Can you help me through this? Of course, I
Hmm.
don't treat them, but I do give them books and things like that to read. But we do all grow. I agree. We all grow in time, and sometimes we grow in different directions, and sometimes we grow
Hmm.
together. Or I mean, I'm friends with some people that social media obviously has changed the world.
Oh, for
But
sure.
there are people there are people that I probably didn't say a word to, in my teens or 20s or whatever, and like I feel like I have a relationship with them now. It's so strange of
How
how
it
everything
works.
works with this social media.
Uh-huh.
But that's just my children can't understand and can't imagine life without
Hmm.
it. But it can be a blessing and a curse, though.
Yeah.
Also.
Because through social media, even people that are kind of close to you that follow you, they see things and see the things that you're doing, or vice
Hmm.
versa. But coming and talking with me today, kind of um, verbalizes it a little bit and helps a little bit more understanding. I suppose hey, I saw a picture and you done this, but
Yeah.
there's a story that leads
Yeah.
up to that. There's a story during that moment. There's a story afterwards.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, what's your how do I want to put this? During the time of growth up into this point, what would you say the lowest moment is that you've overcome?
Hmm. The lowest moment I overcome. I think the lowest moment that I overcome was in 2003. I had just left a very, very toxic, abusive relationship, and I left with my two children, and lived in a battered women's shelter here in Nashville for a few months, 8 weeks, 2 months. And I got out, and um, I guess my lowest moment was I thought this would be easy, like I would just get my kids and move on with my life. And um, I entered what is a civil court system that um,
Which is tough in
allow.
itself.
Oh yeah, it's like it was very overwhelming as a 24-year-old um, young woman with two kids.
Hmm.
I was on the stand at least once every 2 months, trying to explain why I'm a good mother and why I needed my children. And this was a time before cell phones.
Oh,
So there
yeah.
were no pictures of things. There were no, I mean, we had cell phones, but they weren't as high tech as they are now.
No.
Like my life would have went a totally different direction had we had that kind of technology in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up, getting through the divorce, and things just didn't go exactly, as I expected them to do. Yeah, or go. And I got extremely depressed. Like, I guess I should have stayed. I should have stayed. And
You started second guessing what you were doing. A little bit of
yes.
doubt.
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. Chris, there's so many women out there that live in fear. They're
Mm-hmm.
in these relationships and they can't leave because they're scared of the system,
Mm-hmm.
because that allows. So I went through the bout of had take my kids for their weekends or whatever time it was that they were spending there, and I literally I would just bawl. It was like a piece of me was gone. And when you're dealing with depression and you have situational things that happen on top of it, it makes it 10 times worse. And
Yeah.
there got to be a point where at that time I didn't have a high school diploma. I couldn't get a really great job. I did well for someone without a high school diploma. I did a few different jobs that were actually pretty good for someone without a high school diploma, but
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't make it. It was really, really hard. And Chris, I got some I got so bad and down that I went and sought help in a facility. And you know what? It just changed my life. The woman there, I don't know what her credentials were. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I don't know if she was a therapist or I really don't even know.
Yeah.
But she looked at me and she says, "Do you want to be this circumstance or do you want to change it? Because you can stay in it and you can be depressed and but these babies need you
Yeah.
and you need to change it." And Chris, I came out of that, and that was my lowest moment. I came out of that. I got a GED. I got an education. I changed a law here in Tennessee.
Nice.
I wanted that judge that didn't listen to domestic violence removed from the bench, so I lobbied for that for several years, and I became the change that I was crying about and being the victim,
Mm-hmm.
and I became the person that became the victor.
Yeah. That
So
that lady was your angel.
she was. I quite frankly, I wish I could meet with her and tell her just how much she changed me.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been on medication. I started working out. That was another thing. During that time, I came out of there, and I started like
Did you
taking
start
care of
running?
me. Yep, started running,
Yeah.
and I was doing like a lot of. I started out doing like 5Ks and 10Ks and marathons, and I started taking care of me,
Mm-hmm.
and everything just started to get better.
You started to grow.
And yeah, and I remarried, and marriage obviously is not a perfect
No.
recipe ever. I
It
think
can be
that
frightening if you're going to a second time.
yeah, and I tell we grow up with these ideas of Disney princess movies, which is totally unrealistic. And, they don't talk about how those first years are hard or these years. And, so, but I'm going on my 11th year of being married, and
That's great.
he is amazing. We've grown together. I honestly can't be any happier than I am today. I don't think it gets any better than my life today.
Yeah.
And
So
it's a whole regiment,
yeah.
self-care, working out, so
So what is your highest moment up to this date?
oh
What
my
is what is
gosh,
your greatest
graduating,
success?
man, I don't having kids. No,
There's a lot of
having
competition
kids.
in that question.
I'm going to tell you, man, raising children that are as high. But I'm going to tell you, the day that I received my diploma, I finished the program December the ah, 17th, I think, and it didn't come into the mail for like a month later. And when that paper arrived at this house,
Hmm.
I was like, that's it. I can breathe, you know? And then
Hmm.
somebody joked with me and they're like, well, are you going to keep going? What are you going to do next? And
You reached a
I
milestone.
actually, well, actually, I, I didn't know that I could get, I mean, that just, I had reached the ultimate goal of what I wanted to do professionally.
Hmm.
My kids have seen it. I mean, there's so many highs. Being married for 10 years, we celebrated that. I renewed my vows. It's so hard to pick just one, but
Yeah.
I have a lot.
Uh-huh.
So
Just a good turnaround and a good example of, if you keep trying and you keep persevering, you're going to go. It's a phrase I always use, and I use it when I teach class sometimes. Sometimes you got to go deep through the forest before you can, have that successful moment or build a successful life
yeah,
or, career.
you know what's crazy, Chris? I look at things and I call it because I mean I am gonna write a book about a lot of things that happened in my life, and
Hmm.
that's a goal of mine, and I call it the storm. And
Nice.
those uh I don't know which one. Probably the one was the worst with the legal system.
Hmm.
But I want, if I could look at the person that judge today, that storm and her decisions and all of what happened, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Yeah.
So that journey, as bad as it was at the time, and I literally felt like it almost killed me because I mean I was in a very very dark spot.
Yeah,
Um,
because you took the initiative to, in so many steps to help yourself, and there's others that
yeah,
would just be like, "Why is there nobody coming to my house to save me? Why is
yeah,
where is everybody at?" And you went
yeah,
out, you actively seeked help. You
yeah,
just didn't sit on your hands and wait.
yeah. But like just finding the good, there's good even in the bad.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Like there was good that came out of everything bad that's ever happened.
Hmm.
Like if people could just just see the good and the bad that's happening,
Yeah.
like how can I change this? How can I make it better? What can I do to make
Sometimes,
this better?
sometimes that's the kick that you need because you don't always
Yeah,
have you don't feel that reality until you're um, dealt a certain hand and had
yep,
to react to it.
yeah. And we all, I mean, every human being, there's going to be some sort of storm or some sort of trial, and there's something, even if it's an argument with, your mother or your friends,
Hmm.
there's going to be something. But finding the good, like what did you learn? I always ask somebody when, my clients or my friends or, they're like, oh my God, this happened and blah. And I'm like, what did you learn? What was the gift of it? What gift did it give you? What, I mean, if you got burnt by a pan, what gift did that give you?
Hmm.
To check yourself,
How did you
what
heal
gift
up?
did yeah, what gift did you and so broke up, and it was a horrible relationship. So what was the gift that he gave you of when you're looking for another relationship? Make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah, it
So
makes
yeah,
total sense.
we just got to look at the gift, buddy. I mean, you just got to keep going
Yeah.
because this journey is short anyways, and
Yeah,
it really is.
and there's some that they grow up in a household with a single parent, and you think that single parent is totally responsible for everything about that child, but if that child knows that the other parent is out there somewhere, or maybe they cease to exist, or whatever they've done, good, bad, they're always going to be teaching you something because you're going to take a lesson um,
Mhm.
from their absence or
Mhm.
their presence.
Oh
You kind
yeah.
of know what I'm saying.
Oh, exactly. Because if they're you're what gift did you take? Well, I'm going to be present for people,
Hmm.
or maybe I'm not going to take that job that I'm away from my family.
Yeah.
I mean, I recently went through, what I recently went through a change of organizations because I mean, my family will always come first.
Yeah.
And as great as the job was, and as great as this was, the gift that I took was, you know, the next time I'm somewhere, like what's to ask questions and everything. You get gifts and everything if you can just see it.
Hmm.
And I gained skills and from that organization. But as I moved forward, the gift was, as bad as it was, as bad as the trenches I had to and work till 10, 11 o'clock at night and this and that and the other. The gift was that I know what to do and what to ask in another interview.
Yeah.
And, how, like, what are your expectations? I mean, but, and always putting your family first
Hmm.
before anything.
Yeah.
There is no amount of money, there is no amount of anything that can bring you like the happiness of sitting down with your child or your children and being there and present for your family.
Yeah. And sharing
So
everything with them.
yeah. So I mean, Chris, that's just like I've always been very candid.
And I was going to ask you
I
about
absolutely value our friendship. It's
great.
I do. I just love you, buddy. But and you are good. I mean, just surrounding yourself, that's how you get to where I am today. Surrounding yourself with loving, strong, good people and just being candid and loving and kind. I mean, if you can be anything in this world, be kind.
Yeah. Treat others as you want to be treated.
Yeah.
But some people, they don't expect great treatment for people, so they are kind of abusive in their ways. But I was going to ask you about the law that you changed that you mentioned.
Hmm.
Can you speak on that?
Yeah, it was a during that court case um in the state of Tennessee. The children get appointed something called a guardian ad litem, their own attorney. So if you have um, what's a good word for it? If it's a very uh, complex divorce where
Hmm.
people are contesting things and whatever, the children get their own attorney. And I mean, Chris, I could barely pay for my own attorney, much less, a child's attorney.
Yeah.
And her fees were got up to like $15,000, $20,000.
Shoot.
Yeah, and when the divorce was actually final, uh, they wrapped a lot of these attorney's fees in as something. Well, they called the attorney's fees child support,
Oh
but
man.
they were attorney's fees. Make sense?
Yeah.
Well, anyways, so I went to the legislature. Make a long story short, the law caps guardian ad litems out on the fees that they can charge. So they can't charge those fees. They probably are not my biggest fan.
Hmm.
uh, they they got a pay cut, um, but there's a cap to them now,
That's good.
and yeah. So and then the the judge, which wasn't a law, but the judge in my case, finally resigned
Hmm.
after her 10-year stint of ruining people's lives,
Hmm.
being totally oblivious to domestic violence
Hmm.
and anything like that. So, and I was involved in that movement as well because I went to the legislature and testified against her. So it wasn't a
Nice.
law, but so yeah, I learned a lot in that process.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And learned a lot about yourself. I mean, that's a lot to go through. I mean, because you're fighting custody, and then you're also
Yep.
fighting the state with the
Yep.
law, and
Yep.
that's
And
why
it,
some people don't like the system and the criminal system. You wouldn't have to pay attorney because the state would appoint them
yeah,
for you.
exactly. And Chris, the saddest part is this is happening. to people everywhere. It's happening to women, it's happening to men, it's happening to mothers and fathers all over.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's just really sad. I did see a law recently because I keep up with the legislature now. When I'm looking at children and
Mm-hmm.
divorces, I kind of watch it, and I saw where they're just trying to put it across the board that everybody gets 50-50. Like
Oh, okay.
just 50-50. If it's just that's just going to be the standard.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, uh, we can only do so much. Rome wasn't built in a day, and we
Oh,
can't
yeah.
just. I can't be the. I still have. I'm very hopeful. That we keep seeing change, and that mental illness is talked about, that domestic violence is talked about,
Mm-hmm.
that it's just not. We're not silent anymore, because that's the only way to progress.
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
some people feel isolated and they feel like, I'm the only one that's going through this. And at the time,
yeah,
it does feel like you're the only one. But
yeah, yeah. Oh,
the
yeah,
more positive examples we can have, the more that
yeah.
they're going to create.
Yep. You just can't stay silent. You got to talk about it, and that's the best way to heal too. So, and I'm all about healing, Chris.
Hmm. And that's some of the best medicine.
Right. I absolutely positively agree with that. I'm not a medication person. I
No.
meant like anti-medications.
Uh-huh. So what are you currently doing right now? You said you're a therapist, and what is your day
Oh
like
no,
when you go to the office?
oh my goodness. I spend a lot of time in courts. I do therapy with the foster care system. I do therapy with kids who just basically have been to um, like court for behaviors, and the judge appoints them to to go to therapy for modification of behavior. So a lot of kiddos. I work with. It's crazy. Every day is different, Chris. There's no day the same, and I'm really not sitting in an office very often. I go into the home. I work with parents.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm trying to increase parenting skills and to work with them on their traumas. I mean, you know, um, to
Do you feel
heal
like,
them.
yeah, do you feel like if, you catch a home situation and a lot of the times the court will appoint maybe the parents or the kids, you'd be like,
Yes.
well, you need to get counseling. Do
Yep.
you suggest the whole family doing the
Yes.
counseling and not just
Yes.
one?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the whole unit as a whole, because I can do therapy with that kid all day long, but if he's going home to the same situation, or she's going home to the same situation, nothing's going to change. So I
Yeah.
have to build that family.
Because there's some parents
So
out there that I mean, I'm not accusing anybody, but there's some parents out there that are the root of the problem, not just
oh,
the kids. And you don't know that because you can't see the home life or the court can't see it.
so here's my take on that. Clinical opinion here. The their kids act out their feelings. Okay, that's just their way. They don't verbalize things, they act them out. And they are only role playing what they have learned.
Hmm.
So, you can say a kid is bad all you want, that's 16 years old and in trouble, trouble, trouble. But somewhere in that kid is a broken child that needs healing, that I've got to start with a family before I can even address him. And I'm only licensed to be in there for so long. So it's in and out. So I have a lot of work to do. And I'm not that person that stays in for time limits.
Hmm.
I don't have a time limit. If I need to stay 2 hours, that's what I stay. Um, I just, I just, but you got to start with the parent.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and I always the worst thing I hate to hear this, and I see it all the time, like on social media. My kid is bad. No, your kid isn't bad. The choices they made are
Are
bad, but if you
bad.
keep
Yeah.
telling your kid that they're bad, they're going to believe they're bad
Hmm.
and they're going to make bad choices. Kids aren't bad. It's choices that they make. And,
Everyone
you
is
know,
inherently good.
it starts, yeah, Chris, I mean, it starts. They're innocent little babies that come out. I
Hmm.
mean, they don't just miraculously learn these things. And so parents' accountability is very, very low. Like, I'm not the person that sugarcoats anything. So I just come at it and I'm like, here's what we got to do. And I do a lot of role play therapy,
Oh yeah.
like with parents and children. Like, when your mom says this, what do you do? Well, here's what you need to do. Let's role play it. Mom says this. Well, don't you think that that's a little toxic? Would you say that to a 3-year-old, or because they're still cognitively developing and they're 13? So if you wouldn't say it to a 3-year-old, I wouldn't say it to a 13-year-old. So let's role play
Yeah.
that. So it's a very complex thing. As I move forward, I wanted to gain a lot of skill with children because a goal of mine is to have my own practice and facility.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to be, I wanted to be skilled in all areas.
Is that
So,
practice for just kids or the whole family?
oh no, like when I start my practice, I have to get so many hours. It's like a residency. And
Okay.
once I get so many hours in populations,
Hmm.
I can start my own like facility practice, a private practice of counseling, like a counseling center.
Hmm.
And it's going to be called Hope for New Beginnings. And I'm going to treat, adults, children. So I'm trying to get very skilled with kids. So that's why that they're mainly my population right now.
Yeah.
Because I've worked with adults in substance abuse, and then I have my own life experience with, domestic violence. And then now I'm trying to specialize in kids so that when I move towards that goal, that I didn't miss a population.
Hmm.
And I would see myself probably working with grief and loss and like elderly soon. I wouldn't say like real soon, but I'd even like to, um, work with that population as well before I start my practice.
Yeah. Did you
So
in your studies did you study I forget what they call it. It's one of the theories, something five laws of adaptation. The
I
far as
didn't.
being innovative, adaptive. That ring a bell?
It kind of does, but oh my God, my whole life's been based on theories in the last 2 years. There's so many.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I kind of focus when we talk about theories. I surround myself with a few different theories. I believe if you've ever heard of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences,
Hmm.
um, it's kind of like why we are who we are. We
Mm-hmm.
take a 10-question test, and it tells me everything I need to know about anybody 18 and over.
Oh shoot.
Um, Yeah, so I do use, but there's so many theories. Like
Uh-huh.
we could go on for, and that started early in my bachelor's degree. But
Mm-hmm.
I use a certain, I kind of like each therapist kind of has their own like little methods and what they kind of use. And
Are the 10
if I'm
questions
dealing,
something you use?
I'm sorry,
Do you use those 10 questions?
I do.
Uh-huh.
Like I mean, if I'm treating adults, I for one of the first assessments I do is the ACEs trauma assessment. So I start with assessments and then I move towards like, well, what kind of theory based do I want to start practicing, and that would be like CBT or DBT, which cognitive behavior therapy, or everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
But there's when you're a therapist and you hear theory, you're like, oh my God, there's a million of them. I think I started my first one I learned was like Freud, and then moving forward. And there's so many good ones. There's no bad one. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're all helpful. I found like the leadership 360. I don't know if you ever heard of that,
No, I
but
hadn't heard with that one.
that's great for people that, are in business and sales. And how do
Okay.
you identify as a leader? It's called, it's a test you can take online, Leadership 360. I mean, there's so many different things out there and theories of identifying human behavior and, and people. But, it's just, I'm always on the internet. I'm constantly researching.
Have you heard of something called 67 days? You have to have 67 days to build a habit if you do it every day. Have you heard of that?
I haven't.
Oh,
Mm-mm.
that was something that was kind of thrown around in the little business world, and they were talking about how you build good habits and good behaviors is doing something consistently for 67 days, and it'll become a habit.
Yeah,
But I didn't know
yeah.
exactly where that came from, or if you had heard it before.
I don't know. Um,
That's a long time to
kind of
create a
live.
habit.
Well, I kind of live by the 3 week standard. Maybe it's old school, but
Oh
the
yeah.
21 day.
Uh-huh.
If you do something, same concept, but you do it for 21 days straight, and I find that really effective with running. Well, when you quit running and you get back into it on day 21, you're good.
Yeah.
You're back. I mean, so I think you can. I tell you, when it comes to that kind of stuff, I tell you, everybody individually is different. We develop different. We're cognitively different. So identifying and setting a precedence for when you can develop a habit, I
Mhm.
would say I'm not sure that I would align with that because we're all just so different. I mean, we just are. So I do think you can do anything that you set your mind to, though. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Now, when you're out in just your everyday life, maybe around family, friends, does the does the job ever follow you? Do you ever look at somebody and be like, "Man, you're kind of weird,"
Every day.
and have the tendency to
uh,
analyze them or give them advice?
uh, you know, um, uh, does my job, okay, so my job does follow me into my personal life. Uh, I have a teenage daughter.
Mhm.
So when she looks at me and says, "Don't give me your therapy stuff," I know it follows me. Yes. And I have friends that constantly, you know, lean on me for support. But,
Mhm.
do I people watch and analyze? Probably not. Like, we recently had a police officer here in Dixon County, what made national news, Sergeant Baker. He was
Mhm.
violently killed last week
Yeah.
here in my hometown, or where I live. And I actually knew his wife really well. And did I when I see, like, you know the news or things like that, yes, I find myself analyzing,
Mhm.
like, what happened there. And I actually had a really tough time because 2 months ago, we had a little boy that went missing here, and
Mhm.
little boy named Joe Clyde Daniels. And I do volunteer work with American Red Cross, so I was out there for that. And I found myself like, what happened here? Like, why would these parents do this? And I serve this community and these
Mhm.
kids, so it was really hard to watch that. Like, why couldn't I have been in that home helping that family?
Yeah.
Um, but I do find it, and I asked somebody one day. I was like, well, it was a mentor. I was like, why do I, like, see this differently from, like, everybody? And they're like, because you're a therapist. I
Mhm.
mean, like, I look through a different scope than some people. Like, I look at, like, what happened to that person that did that got them to where they are
Yeah.
to do that.
I totally understand that.
Whereas other people are like, oh my God, just, they, you know, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
You get it. They're like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happened. That's what they did, and this is the punishment they need, and this is this. And I look at it through a
The
social work
bigger
lens.
picture.
Yeah.
or a broader
And I
picture?
think, and recently after both of these events in our county, I thought, why do we not have therapists in the system, like in the jails, like
Hmm.
treating these people? Like, why do we not have therapists in every school?
Between yeah,
Mental health.
because the victims are usually get the with the victim witness coordinator, they usually have it the option first, but there's
Yeah.
there's limited resources for
Yep. Limited
rehabilitation.
Yep.
Yeah,
But it's just like if we had mental health clinicians and schools and jails, and I mean, what would the world be like?
hmm,
Like if we were trying to you know to help these people, although some people believe they don't even need help, like
that's
the
hard one to
public doesn't
overconquer.
believe they need help,
Yeah,
you know. But like if we were in the jails and we were in the schools and we were just constantly helping and getting the mental health treatment that these people really need, where would we be at in like 10, 15, 20 years? I mean, will we have school shootings? Would we? So, uh, you know,
it's a lot
yeah,
going on.
it's every day I
Uh,
think about like how to change the world, Chris. Like what should we do today? Or
yeah,
but yes, I do bring it home, but I don't sit. Yeah, I don't like when I
it
see
doesn't cripple
somebody.
you.
No, no, it doesn't. There's some cases that get me a little bit more than more than others, but
Hmm.
yeah, I don't just you know, I'm not I just don't, I just don't bring it home with me. If I did, I would get complete burnout, compassion fatigue. So hence why we bought a farm and why I go out and farm at 6:30 on Saturday morning.
Nice. Do you have cows?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
No, it's 65 acres and there's a lot of mowing to do and weed eating and we have dogs. But
Nice.
we're just getting adjusted to the place. But
Hmm.
that's kind of been my peaceful refuge to come home and do something and not think about social work and therapy and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's your getaway. That's your domain, your chair.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna end it right here. Again, I appreciate you taking time out of your day, away from your family and your precious time to talk with me. And we get this
Oh,
episode out, and um, for the world to listen to, and for if it's two or three people, maybe it's a dozen people to listen to, become inspired, and find it within themselves, you know, to improve on what they have, because we all
hmm
reach a certain point and we don't want to reach a point where we just coast and eventually that leads to you falling downhill. Life is about, moving forward and overcoming the obstacles. And you're a good example of that. One of the reasons I, ask you to be on the show.
oh, I enjoyed it, Chris. Anytime, anytime. And if anybody asks you anything or want to reach out by email, you can give them that or whatever.
Hmm.
I always want to inspire somebody. So thanks for having me.
Cool. I appreciate you taking the time. Is there any plugs that you want to make? You want to promote anything or any last words?
I think I already quoted my favorite quote. And if you can be anything in the world, be kind.
Hmm.
Be kind. And you can do anything you can. You really can. I believe in everybody that's listening that if you got a dream, don't give up on it.
Cool. I appreciate
All
it.
right. Thanks, Chris.